You know, in every rebellion, there's always that one figure who just seems invincible, the hero right at the center of the storm. For the Maccabean revolt, that was Judas, the hammer. But what happens when the hammer finally falls? Today, we're diving into the ninth chapter of First Maccabees, and let me tell you, it's a powerful story of devastating loss, chaos, and the unlikely rise of a very different kind of leader. And really, that's the question at the heart of this whole chapter. The rebels have been riding this incredible wave of momentum under their larger-than-life general Judas Maccabeus. So what happens when that indispensable leader is suddenly gone? Well, the answer is a brutal lesson in politics, warfare, and ultimately survival. All right, so before the battle lines are drawn, let's get our key players straight so we can follow the action. On one side, we have the famous Maccabee brothers. Judas, the warrior, the legend known as the Hammer, along with his brothers Jonathan and Simon. And facing them, the full might of the Seleucid Empire, led by their general Bacchides and the high priest Alcimus, who's actually sided with the empire. The dynamic between these brothers, especially, is going to become the absolute heart of our story. So, the Seleucid king, Demetrius, is, you can imagine, absolutely furious that his last general was killed. He sends Bacchides right back into Judea with a massive army, and they march straight for Judas's position. This is it. This sets the stage for a confrontation that is going to change everything. And when I say the odds were stacked against them, I mean, it's just staggering. Judas started with 3,000 men, but when they saw this professional army of 22,000 soldiers marching towards them, their courage just collapsed. They deserted in droves, leaving him with just 800 loyalists. His own men pleaded with him. They begged him to retreat and fight another day. But for Judas, retreat was just never an option. And this quote, man, it just perfectly captures Judas's entire mindset. He's the hammer. His whole reputation is built on fearless head-on battles. For him, fleeing would be a betrayal of everything he stood for. So he makes that fateful decision to stand his ground, choosing honor over survival. So Judas goes for this incredibly audacious plan. He spots the enemy general, Bacchides, on the right flank and leads a desperate charge directly at him. And incredibly, it works. The enemy wing breaks and they flee. But here's the thing. That success? It was a deadly trap. While Judas's men are giving chase, the massive left wing of the Seleucid army just wheels around, encircling them from behind. Surrounded and hopelessly outnumbered, Judas, the hammer, is finally cut down. The death of Judas sends an absolute shockwave across the land. The heart of the rebellion has been ripped out, and the immediate aftermath is dark and brutal. The hope he inspired, it felt like it died right there with him on that battlefield. This was the cry you could hear all throughout Judea. His brothers, Jonathan and Simon, managed to recover his body and bury him. But the entire nation is just plunged into mourning. The man who had seemed invincible, who had delivered them time and time again, was gone. And with the rebellion shattered, things went from bad to worse, fast. Bacchides installed leaders loyal to the empire all across the country. Then, a severe famine hits the land, forcing desperate people to side with the new regime just to survive. A brutal crackdown began. Anyone who had ever supported Judas was hunted down and executed. It was the darkest period of affliction the nation had seen in generations. For 2 long, oppressive years, this quiet fell over the land. The Seleucids fortified cities all throughout Judea, cementing their control. The Maccabean cause, which had once been this blazing fire of hope, really seemed to have been extinguished for good. But just when all hope seems lost, the embers of rebellion begin to glow again. The remaining friends of Judas realize they can't survive without a leader. They need someone to rally around, someone to fight their battles. So in their desperation, who do they turn to? Judas's youngest brother, Jonathan. He wasn't the famed warrior his brother had been. He was known more for his cunning mind, for being clever. With no other options, they implored him to be their new captain. And reluctantly, Jonathan accepted the impossible task of stepping out of his brother's colossal shadow. And this right here is where the whole story just pivots. Jonathan knows he can't be his brother. He can't win a big, pitched battle against the Seleucid army. So he doesn't even try. He becomes a fox, not a hammer. He flees with his followers into the wilderness and begins a totally new kind of war. And Jonathan's first big move? It was both strategic and deeply personal. After a local tribe murdered his other brother, John, Jonathan learned they were holding a lavish wedding, so he laid an ambush, slaughtering the wedding party and turning their celebration into a funeral. This sent a brutal message across Judea. The Maccabees were back, and they were now playing by a whole different set of rules. Hearing Jonathan was back, the Seleucid general Bacchides marched out to Crushon, trapping his small force against the Jordan River. It looks like the end, but Jonathan urged his men to fight for their lives, and then, in a brilliant move, they all just leaped into the river and swam to safety. Bacchides' heavily armored army? They couldn't follow. This escape just perfectly shows Jonathan's clever survivalist tactics. This cleverness was on full display at the fortress of Bethbesses. When Bacchides laid siege to it, the brothers executed this perfect two-pronged strategy. Simon held the fortress from the inside, while Jonathan slipped out and waged a guerrilla war on Bacchides' supply lines and allies, even burning his siege engines. They made the siege so costly and so painful that Bacchides' resolve just began to crumble. So you have to imagine what's going through Bacchides' mind. He is completely frustrated. He came to Judea expecting to crush a rebellion in one quick battle. Instead, he's being bled dry by this invisible enemy he can't even catch. His campaign was a total failure, and he grew furious at the local sympathizers who had told him to come in the first place. Seeing his enemy is at the breaking point, Jonathan makes his move. He sends ambassadors to negotiate, and Bacchides, just weary of the whole affair, accepts. He agrees to release all the prisoners, swears an oath never to attack Jonathan again, and withdraws his entire army from Judea. It is a stunning victory, and he did it not with a hammer, but with pure cunning and patience. And just like that, the war is over. Jonathan sets up his base at Machmas and effectively becomes the new ruler of Judea. He begins to govern and reestablish the rebel cause. The man who rose from the ashes of his brother's defeat, he did it. He carved out a new, independent state through sheer wit and perseverance. But this leaves us with a really critical question, doesn't it? This peace wasn't won through a decisive, glorious battlefield victory like the kind his brother Judas always went for. This was a truce born of mutual exhaustion. Jonathan outlasted his enemy. He didn't destroy him. And the question that just hangs in the air is, how stable can a peace like that truly be?